Okay, welcome to Finding Your Way in Business Relationships. My name is Randall Adcock. I'm your host, and this is a presentation by Jayne Willoughby, who is a relationship coach specializing in men in their marital relationships. But today she's talking about business relationships, bringing forth a lot of wisdom, skills, and insights into client relations. And she does run her own business, so she has some experience as well from in business relationships of her own. Welcome, Jayne, and perhaps you could further introduce yourself as a professional relationship coach and how that translates into business relationships.
Yeah, that's great, Randall. It's great to be here and to be able to talk to you about what I'm most passionate about in my world. And I started my journey on becoming a relationship coach started when I was in my teens and trying to learn about relationships with other people at the time as we all sort of spread our wings and try and find our way. We're experimenting and making mistakes left, right, and center, and we're all in a massive learning on a massive learning track at that time. So I can relate to everyone in that situation. I went on and became a nurse and taught nurses in psychiatry how to communicate with the patients and in difficult situations. And that was very illuminating for me. And I, excuse me, I loved teaching about communication and studying it. And Virginia Satir was the one we followed at that time. She was pretty popular in the 70s. So I was using that as a model. Then I went on and did a master's degree in family studies and human ecology and was studying the system of the family and how it functioned and where the difficulties arose in those kinds of situations related to birth order and societal pressures and all this kind of stuff. And then I became a stay-at-home mom with two little adopted babies, and that was a whole nother learning experience and learning how to communicate with services outside to try and get them the help they needed and support they needed. So another big learning curve there. And then I went into fine arts and I was an artist and learning to present myself that way and began to be very interested in the creative process and that how that shows up in each of us, whether we're an artist or not. And so I'm using all of these things when I'm working as a coach, and they inform everything that I do. I started getting formally trained as a coach after teaching nursing for quite a number of years. Um, my formal training and coaching started when my 30-year marriage ended over a decade ago, and I felt I needed to learn something and get myself recertified to do something. And coaching was what I landed on, and it was the best training ground I could have found for helping me help other people who were struggling with their own relationships. And it's been very rich and rewarding. And I've seen so many people change, be altered by doing the work with a coach, and be changed for the rest of their lives in the way they respond to the what shall I call it, the shit of life. And so that's my background and how I got to where I am today. I have a special interest in working with men because I see all the time how men are suffering in silence, alone. They know they have a situation on their hands they are struggling with, and they don't know where to turn. They feel humiliated that they can't solve these relationship problems. They're estranged from their wives and their families in some way. They're workaholics or exerciseaholics or into substances or whatever, and as a way to kind of numb the pain. And when I've seen them do start to open up, with me in a safe way and in an anything goes way, um, they actually can make major breakthroughs in finding their way back to their partners or finding their way through divorce in a more graceful way than they would have had they not done the work. So um, I have a special fondness for the men. And I also work with couples, men and women together, or men and men together, or whatever, in couples. And I also work with individuals. Often the women will come for assistance, but their husbands won't. And major change and transformation can be made by working with one of the couple because it has a ripple effect in the relationship. So
Right.
it's very helpful.
And
With
this
yeah,
all translates into the business world as well, doesn't it? I mean, relationships are all about communicating and
yeah.
um, building trust and respect, and that all is true in business as it is in the domestic field.
Yeah, and often people who are struggling on the home front also struggle in the workplace because they're stressed, and it comes through in their team management styles and that kind of thing. So I'll be covering that as we go through the presentation.
So the presentation will take about half an hour,
Yeah,
and then we'll have open it up for any questions and answers for those who are in attendance.
yeah, that's great. And if you'd like to put your questions as we go through in chat, then Randall will interrupt if he sees it
Right.
is necessary.
I'll be
Yeah.
monitoring chat. Yes.
Yeah. So when I was trying to decide what to cover in this presentation after Randall and I talked, I thought I would deal with some of the mystery about relationship coaching. Um, because many people don't have a strong sense of what coaching is. And it's a mystery to people. So it doesn't have to be a mystery. So I'm going to try and cover some of these ideas. As business owners, you're creative, very intelligent, and I would say you're the visionaries in our communities. You know how to do research and numbers, and you put yourself out there to network with others in business. You're gifted in technologies with AI and with the other instruments of business. And you, like every other human, could use some support and coaching around improving your relationships, whether these are in the workplace, in the communities you're in, or in your personal life with family and intimate partners. You might even want to spend some time looking at your relationship with yourself. So, all the things we talk about can be a metaphor for what happens in other areas in your life. And the developing and nurturing of relationships relates to the so-called soft skills that you hear business people and academics talk about. These often get put at the end of everyone's to-do list, partly because the details of relationships always seem so mysterious and hard to define and talk about. There are very few hard and fast rules when it comes to relationship. There's no definitive right or wrong when it comes to relationships. It's not black and white and based in the hard sciences. This makes it tough for people. And every human is unique. So when you think about that, the connection between two humans is even more unique than the individual human. So it gets very complicated quickly. And it's constantly changing. We are, as organisms, are constantly changing. The relationships are filled with opportunities to learn some of the most important, rich, and difficult lessons of life. And you say, why would anyone want to do this kind of work? Like it sounds complicated right off the get-go. Why would you want to even bother going into that playground? And I recently heard a discussion on the radio amongst business experts, and one of them said that it's the soft skills that separate businesses at the highest levels. of success from those businesses where soft skills are not addressed. It's that emotional intelligence they're referring to, related to the soft skills. And when you give these some attention and you develop practices that work for you as business owners working with clients or employees in the workplace or any other relationship that's challenging you, you more easily discover opportunities to check out the assumptions you might be making and move more quickly and easily to clarifying the challenges and coming up with ways to make adjustments. You'll find it amazing how right on you are when you check whether your perceptions are going in the right direction or not. I'm going to focus on some important soft skills here in ways that will hopefully bring these into focus more for you as you go through your workday, with the ultimate goal of improving your most challenging relationships in your business and personal life. So I'm going to give you some concrete ways you can work with these ideas when you leave this space. How many of you have ever had the experience of working with a life coach? With all the mystery about coaching, there is much fear and resistance about asking for help. So I want to tell you a bit up front about how I work when I'm coaching a client. Creating a safe place for my clients to explore thoughts and ideas is my first focus with every client. Strict confidentiality practices in accordance with the ICF International Coaching Federation ethical guidelines is key. And creating a judgment-free environment are the two most important aspects of creating a safe space. The client is always in the driver's seat. So what does that mean? If the client wants help from me, why they don't want to be in the driver's seat necessarily. They want some answers from me. But what that means is that they will show up with a plan in mind or something they want to address in the coaching session. And depending on what their goals are and what they set out at the beginning of the contract of coaching, we'll go in that direction, or we'll start in that direction and come back to what the basic goals were that they wanted to achieve. So they're in the driver's seat, and I help guide them to stay in that driver's seat unless they want to switch gears and cover other goals. But the client is always in charge of what's happening in the coaching sessions. The coach's role is to reflect back to the client what they see and hear from the client. The perceptions of the coach are always influenced by the coach's knowledge and life experience. So I bring all of my training, all of myself to the coaching sessions to try and help serve my clients meet the goals that they want, what their desired outcome is in their relationships. And it's all influenced by culture, age, gender, birth order, genetics, etc. So all of these things come into play. This is what makes it so important to find a coach that's a good fit in helping you meet your desired goals. A good fit is key. And if I start working with a client and it becomes evident it's not a good fit, and as a coach, I review that on a regular basis with the client if it's still working for them. If it isn't, then we find some other alternative or I refer them on to someone else. The coach's role is to ask clarifying and redirecting questions that help you find your own unique answers and help you make lasting changes to the ways you face relationship challenges. The coach is not to solve your problems and challenges for you. If I solved your problems for you, then you wouldn't make the changes, the transformational changes you want to be making. You would be dependent on somebody else the next time helping you solve your problems. And my goal is to help you become the expert of you and learn to solve your problems with support. The coach is not a consultant, but shares knowledge and information as needed. The coach's expertise is in creating a safe space for exploration, deep listening, asking powerful questions, and giving valuable feedback. Diving a bit deeper into my process as a coach, I help clients clarify roadblocks in the relationship they have with themselves and relationships they have with others, and the relationship they have with the external or environmental factors related to their situations. So that an example of that relationship with the external might be an example might be what we're seeing going on in the world today. We all have some kind of relationship with what we hear on CNN about what's happening in the world, or Fox, or whatever we're listening to. And that has an effect on our relationship challenges, whether we're conscious of it or not. It's important that we all, at different times in our lives, face challenges and get stuck in each of these areas. So the relationship with ourself, the relationship with others, and the relationship with external environments or the situations, we all get stuck in those at some point. So it's important to work with a coach you trust who can help you move through the obstacles quickly and with greater ease. In my coaching, I've defined a three-pillar approach to working through relationship challenges, which works well with my clients. Can you do the next slide, Randall? Oh, go back one. These three pillars are the 3Cs model. They're connect, clarify, and create. And these 3Cs are woven through every conversation I have with the clients to help keep us on track, especially when the mental chaos and brain fog moves in and starts taking over. Working with me, clients learn to use this simple structure to help themselves define what their challenges are and identify steps they might take to move forward toward a resolution and peace in their relationships. And I'll talk about this more later in the presentation. Next slide. Another part of the mystery of examining relationship pain lies in those characteristics each of us brings into the relationship. We have all developed positive and negative conditioned tendencies as a result of reacting to our life experiences and our constant human drive to make meaning of what we're experiencing. These patterns of perception, reaction, and response start developing in the first moments after birth from our mother's womb, and maybe even before that. And these tendencies are well entrenched by the time we start school. I believe we spend the rest of our lives living into these conditioned tendencies and safely exploring ways we can adjust those tendencies that become troublesome in our relationships. So when you think about it, in my years of experience as a nurse and helping deliver babies and caring for young children, it was so obvious to me that from the time that infant takes its first breath, it's reacting in some way to the world it's exposed to. And from those reactions and responses and things that happen to that infant, this is what creates conditioned tendencies. And because a lot of this happens before we can speak or understand any of it, we end up spending a lot of our life trying to figure ourselves out and, and trying to understand, why did I just snap that woman's head off in the office? I don't dislike her. What was going on there? So there was maybe a conditioned tendency there that the root of how that boss spoke to an employee. So these things come up for us all the time, and there's you need to be able to work them through with someone who doesn't judge you for being a nasty soul or something. And this is where reviewing some of our conditioned tendency or looking back over our lives where things, our bad habits got started, can be very helpful. That said, the coach doesn't spend a lot of time on history, but moves us forward to reach our goals that we have today. Another organizational structure that I use was developed by Shirzad Chamine, positive intelligence. He was a businessman and created a structure for examining and talking about the painful and negative energies we carry with us, which creates most of our biggest challenges. Next slide. I have clients complete an easy online saboteur assessment developed by Shameen. This helps us quickly start talking about some of those hard to reach, complex, negative influences that keep showing up in our troubling relationships. So he from his research and development of this program, he found that there were 9 saboteurs that people can have different combinations of those saboteurs, but everybody has one, everybody has the judge. So next slide is the judge. We all have a judge. And I mean, some people like to get into identifying the saboteurs and really dig into what the characteristics of those different associate saboteurs are. But we all have a judge, and we know when that negative energy is starting to take us over. We hear ourselves saying, "Why did I say that?" Or "I'm the dumbest person in the room. I don't know. I don't know what these guys are talking about. Why am I even here?" Or "I don't want to talk about relationships. That's not going to help me at all. I'm out. I'm out of here." So we all have these judge negative energies inside of us. We hear the thoughts, we have the thoughts that are negative, and this is when it's helpful to take a look at your saboteurs and how they're influencing your relationships with anyone, whether it's at work or at home. So this is a powerful tool that I can say with all honesty, it always creates profound shifts in clients' life experiences because the way it's set up by Shameen, it's presented non-judgmentally. It's an exploration of, behaviors we hadn't really identified before, or maybe we had seen them and just, didn't know what to do with them, so just ignored them. So, but it's a very helpful tool and it creates transformational change for everyone who experiences it. If people are interested, I'd be happy to send them a link to that saboteur assessment. If you would like to email me and let me know you'd like it, I'll send it on to you. I'd be happy to do that. So it's free and you do it online and it takes maybe 2 or 3 minutes, maybe 5 at the most. So yeah, just email me and I'll send it on to you. I'll give you my email address at the end of the presentation. So the next slide is about my work as guiding clients through a 7-week life-changing mental fitness program where you learn how to identify your most prominent saboteurs. And this is related to Shameen's positive intelligence work. So it's a 7-week program. You learn about the physiology of your brain and just the facts like that our brains are plastic. That means we're able to renew pathways of functioning in our brain until we're well into our 90s, they're finding. So it's never too late to start looking at these things and maybe try and create new pathways of response for yourself if that's what you want. So this is this 7-week mental fitness program, which is life altering as well. And it helps to continue to work with a coach for a while after that 7-week program to help you learn how these saboteurs show up and how to manage them and what strategies to use to present yourself as your best self in challenging situations. So this knowledge helps your reach your performance at high levels, whether it's work related or personal. So we all have saboteur energies, and you can easily learn to identify them quickly and discover easy ways to start managing them. This is one of the keys to overcoming relationship challenges. I also like to include supporting information about the biology of males and females and what's currently known about neurophysiology. Next slide. Yeah. An example of this is when I talk to clients about the ways we can respond to troubles when they show up. When anxiety or fear gets triggered in our brains, we tend to react in one of 3 ways. And you've probably heard this multiple times before. So the 3 ways that we respond generally, is that you go into battle with your partner to prove how right you are or to just feel heard. Or number two, you quickly take action to solve the problem, to relieve the pain, and figure out creative actions to take without involving the partner. Or number three, you become frozen in your not knowing what to do and isolate yourself from the discomfort. This is basically what we call the fight, flight, or freeze response. And it's often said to be the function of the amygdala or primitive brain, which is said to take over in times of great stress or fear. The amygdala is two small tissue masses buried deep in the medial temporal lobe. It responds to threats, whether real or perceived. So think of that. If you have an employee who's very anxious, they might be in that fight, flight, or freeze frame of mind when they're talking to you about some situation or presentation related to work. And if they're operating from that fight, flight, or freeze place, it's hard for them to function at their best selves. So being able to see it as a business person is very helpful in the way you interact with people around you. So the amygdala activates quickly and it often overrides logic and rationality. The amygdala controls feelings of fear, anxiety, and aggression, and it detects threats and mobilizes the body for immediate action and reaction. Some of the more recent science is suggesting this is an oversimplification of what happens in our brains when we're faced with danger and can't seem to access our executive brain. But for now, this fight, flight, or freeze response as a simple response is good enough for us in discussing it. The executive brain is the part of the brain in the frontal lobe area that helps you plan, focus, remember details, and juggle multiple tasks to achieve goals. The executive brain is where you have flexible thinking and self-control that you can manage daily life behaviors and emotions. It also links emotions with memories, especially when these are strongly positive or negative. So this is the part of the brain you want to be in when you're trying to work through relationship challenges, not the amygdala. So when I talk about neurophysiology, I use it as a way to help you understand that there's something going on in our brain and in the person's who you're talking to brain that they aren't aware of probably and don't feel like they have any control over. And it's very helpful to recognize that and realize that that might be interfering with the way the communication is going between two people. So again, I will refer you back to having an employee who's maybe an anxious soul, maybe has had some difficulty in life, in early life that has nothing to do with the workplace, but that anxiety that they live with all the time may affect their interactions with you, their boss. They might be in the freeze zone every time you walk into their office to talk to them about something. And it's very helpful actually to be able to recognize that that might be going on for someone that you're trying to communicate with. So the neurophysiology I try and present in a way to enhance the learning about human beings, a magnificent complex system. So let's dive a bit deeper into my three-pillar structure that I use with the clients. When relationship challenges start to reveal themselves to us, we get an inkling there's something going astray here. We start to see how badly we're stuck in our old and ineffective negative ways of responding to others. When this happens, I've discovered it's most helpful for me and my clients to apply my three pillars process to help us work through the mental chaos and intense pain and emotion. Next slide, Randall. The first of these pillars is connect. We can't be in a relationship with anyone if we don't connect with them in some way. So just think about that. We have to connect with people in some way. Our businesses won't survive and grow with ease if we don't focus enough energy and time on creating good relationships with our clients, our partners, those in our communities. and perhaps most importantly, with the relationship with ourselves. So it's the quality of the connections we have that are going to determine the ease and flow of the relationships. There are three types of connecting, and these are connecting with the self, connecting with others, and connecting with the situation. And I covered that earlier. I just wanted to repeat it, that there's three levels to connection. Exploring these three layers of connecting is the first step in resolving relationship challenges when you work with me. The next slide, there are tips about connecting with self. Developing a regular practice of self-reflection, contemplation, meditation, or mindfulness will create the inner environment for looking inward and connecting to yourself with ease. Now, this is where people in business often don't want to go toward the woo-woo part of relationship work. And I have to say that I have always been a terrible meditator, I thought, judged myself harshly about that, because I always have thoughts creeping in and interfering with my focusing on having a blank slate mind. And once I decided to throw my hands up and open my eyes to meditate, everything seemed to be easier because I'm a visual person, I'm an artist, and I can meditate with my eyes open, looking at something for hours with no thoughts going through my head. I can do artwork as a meditation, form of meditation. Nothing's in my mind. I'm very aware of my body. And that's what you want. Some people actually find jogging meditative or, walking or Randall walking out in the woods with showing, sharing all his photos that he takes. That's a form of meditation. Some people find making music meditative. So um, these these activities don't need to be woo-woo and way out there. And I actually encourage people to find their own form of meditation that gets them to that mind-body connection, whatever it is that works for them. All of these help us learn to look inward, learn to connect to ourselves. And we need to be able to do that if we want to connect with others. The next slide on tips about connecting with others. Others need to feel and see us putting a conscious effort into connecting with them in order for them to feel valued and to feel like they matter. The connection doesn't have to be perfect, but it needs to be heartfelt and real or authentic. It really helps when we're trying to connect with others that we are well connected with who we are and why and how this newly developing connection with another person matters to us. So it really, the thing that seems to help other people see this is when I talk about connecting with their children. The children have to see us wanting to connect with them, or else it doesn't matter, right? I mean, when I grew up, my mother would be reading the paper and I'd come in to tell her some important story of the day. And she'd keep reading the paper. And I'd say, Mom, you're not listening. She said, Yes, I can tell you everything you just said. And she'd rhyme it all off. But she still had the paper up in front of her. So it was a way of her disconnecting. And it made me see that she wasn't that interested in connecting, or she would have lowered the paper and looked at me. So these little things that we do that are not intended to be harmful happen. And it's very helpful to be able to see them for what they are. Deep listening is a key part of being able to make any great connection. From my years of experience and training, the ability to listen deeply is one of the most important aspects to making powerful connections with others. It sounds simple and straightforward, but when you focus on deep listening as a practice, it actually can be very challenging for lots of different reasons. So I have a question for you. Who taught you how to listen? Do you recall anyone teaching you how to listen? When I was thinking about this question a few years ago and asking myself, how would I respond to that? I don't remember anybody teaching me how to listen. I do remember in grade 5 sitting at my desk and the teacher quietly walking up behind me and slapping her pointer stick on my desk. And I assumed that that was her trying to teach me how to listen. I wasn't sure, but it didn't help me because I was a daydreamer and I daydreamed all the way through school. Um, but I think it's a good question for us to think about. Who taught us how to listen? And did they do a good job of that? When we talk about listening, we most often are referring to what we hear, the words, the sounds, and the tones. Communication experts talk about communication being 75 to 90% nonverbal. I always thought it was 75%, but a friend of mine who was a judge and just doing some coursework in communication said that he had been told it was 90%. 90% of communication is nonverbal. Well, when you think of that, then only 10 to 25% of communication is verbal. But that's what we pay attention to mostly, isn't it? We listen to the words and the thoughts and the ideas. And I wanted to ask you to take a look at what's going on in the 75 to 90% that's said to be nonverbal. And so you start to think of that. What is that 90%? What does it look like? The way I like to break it all down is that I divide it into, so there's the listening with your ears, that's what is the 10 to 25%. And then the other 90% is divided into listening with your eyes and listening with your heart. So listening with your eyes is what you observe with your eyes about the other person while you listen with your ears for sound. The data you take in with your eyes helps you make sense of the words you hear. For me, this includes environmental lightness and darkness, the position of the observed body as it sits in space and time, and behaviors and body movements that appear while listening with your ears. So when you think about that, and the example of the business owner going in and talking to one of his employees, and she's the anxious sort who had some difficulties as a child that made her forever anxious. What is he observing with his eyes when he's listening to her struggling to speak to him? Is she sweating? Are her hands trembling? Is she, coughing and sort of having little body movements that would give him more information that she's extremely uncomfortable? This is what listening with your eyes is about. We also listen with our hearts, and this happens when you feel the energy coming from the other person as they speak. It's the feeling of emotion and undefined energy of the person you're listening to with your ears. It's when you become aware of undefined feelings emanating from the speaker and the environment while you were listening with ears and eyes. We may not be able to hear or see specific clues or data about what's going on, but at times we can somehow feel in our bodies when something is changing or going right or wrong, or when something is somehow going sideways. This could be called our gut feelings or intuition. So think about that when you walk into a room and your employee is there or your client is there and you don't know what's really going on, but gosh, you feel something. You feel a dark cloud over the room, maybe, or somebody really excited and happy about something. You can feel these things in your body. We pick them up as little clues in our gut or just an awareness that we weren't expecting. So this is what I'm talking about when it comes to listening with your heart and then trying to uncover that and understand it, what's going on for the client. That is listening with your heart, and it's very valuable. So when you perceive something, there's hearing of words and sounds with your ears. There's the observations you make with your eyes about the other while you listen to sounds, and there's the listening with your heart. And this is a good place to mention the contagion effect. This can influence our interpretations and perceptions of a relationship situation. The contagion effect is helpful when you're exploring what's behind the relationship challenges. It's all about the unspoken influences we have on others. It's about the energies we carry as we move through our lives and how these energies affect others. I know you've all had the experience of being in a room with a group of people, a team maybe at work, and someone walks in and they're carrying a very negative, judging energy about them. We can feel instantly this negativity. It takes over the whole room somehow. And automatically, other people start shutting down and going into protective mode. That's the contagion effect. The same holds true for those situations when somebody's positive and light and bubbly and walking into the room. We can all feel that energy when they're pumped up and, hey, hi, how are you? And yeah, oh, wow, what's going on? Oh, this great thing just happened to me. And, it's contagious. And knowing that, we can more consciously become aware of how we walk into a room, how we want to influence a client or employees, people who work with us. Decide before you walk into the room how you want to present yourself and show up that way with that body stance and that energy that goes along with your desired outcome. We can do that consciously if we put some effort into it. The second pillar in my working process is clarify. This is where you clarify your own perceptions, experiences, and feelings, as well as what you assume of your clients and others. I often use the Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz as a guide for exploring clarity with my coaching clients. Next slide, Randall. To quickly summarize the Four Agreements, the first one is be impeccable with your words. Speak with integrity. Say only what you mean. Avoid using the word to speak against yourself or to gossip about others. Use the power of your word in the direction of truth and love. Number two is don't take anything personally. Nothing others do is because of you. What others say and do is a projection of their reality, their own dream. When you are immune to the opinions and actions of others, you won't be a victim of needless suffering. Number three is don't make assumptions. Find the courage to ask questions and to express what you really want. Communicate with others as clearly as you can to avoid misunderstanding, sadness, and drama. With just this one agreement, you can completely transform your life. Number four, always do your best. Your best is going to change from moment to moment. It will be different when you're tired as opposed to being well rested. Under any circumstance, simply do your best and you will avoid self-judgment, self-abuse, and regret. Referring back to these four agreements becomes a quick and easy way to check in on your own bad habits. And it helps in resetting behaviors when it feels like they're starting to slide uncontrollably into chaos and negativity. As you learn to do this yourself, you'll find that you're able to make shifts in your interactions with others with greater ease and flow. So it's helpful to take a look at these, be aware of these four agreements, and ask yourself when things are going sideways, am I making an assumption about this person? Am I making the assumption that they really don't want to be doing the work, or is it something else? So this is a quick way to check in with yourself. Am I taking something personally that really isn't about me? They're speaking about something, but it's not about me. It's about what's going on in the situation. So, and that's very helpful in remembering when you're trying to clarify what's happening. The next slide is the third pillar in the process of working through relationship challenges. You'll learn some easy strategies when you work with me for coming up with some creative actions that you can do to help in building rich and satisfying relationships. When you learn these strategies, you'll be able to move quickly through the challenging situation more quickly. when I've observed people in action, in coaching, they frequently want to jump to the creating a solution, creating something they can do to improve the situation. They'll work this out in their own mind and decide this is what we need and start to put things in motion. But actually, when you do that kind of creating, it can actually not work for you at all and can create more of a block in a relationship because you haven't dealt with the connection with the other person yet more more effectively. So it seems to be easier for many people to start with creation and creating something that they think is going to work. So they tend to go to the create pillar first, but this does backfire over and over again. And I encourage everyone to start at the pillar one, the connection, work and on developing very deep connections with clients or employees, and then move from there into clarify and create. That way you'll be creating more ease and flow in the process of a relationship unfolding, and there'll be less negativity and judgment. Creative action will just seem to happen magically when there's that good connection, good deep connection, and no judgment in the room. There's one more thing I wanted to mention before I go to questions. Could you go to the next slide? Validation. Yeah. Validation is all about learning to validate others. Everyone wants to feel like they've been seen and heard. They want to be validated. They want to feel like they matter in the relationship, whether they're a recipient of a service, a buyer of a widget, or the parent of your 3 children. It's not hard to create this kind of message in any relationship when you put some attention on it being important. When you validate others with intention and authenticity, you'll have clients wanting to come back for your assistance, employees bending over backward to do a good job for you, and significant others wanting to spend more time with you. Validation doesn't need to be a grand gesture. It might be a simple acknowledgement from you when hearing the other's message by responding with eye-to-eye contact and a smile. Or it could be taking the time to purchase a well-thought-out, beautiful gift for your partner and presenting it with acknowledgement for their efforts during a difficult situation. Or it could be providing your clients the best of service added to a heartfelt inquiry about their ailing wife who they had talked about with you the last time you met. This is what validation is. It's hearing the messages with your ears, eyes, and heart, followed by clarification to make sure you have a clear understanding of their experience. This must be followed by some verbal or other kind of acknowledgement of your understanding of their situation. You do not have to agree with their perceptions or experience. It's not about being right or wrong about something. But if you want to strengthen the relationship and decrease emotional roadblocks, you must take the time to acknowledge the other person without judgment of their opinions or actions in a situation, and without judgment of yourself. This is what validation is. It gets easy to do with practice, and it's another powerful tool for your best life toolbox. Next slide, Randall. That idea of validation is very helpful, and especially in these fraught political times, it's a very good strategy to learn and use over and over again. So, are there any questions or comments?
A couple, Jane, a couple of things that popped up for me. Right at the beginning, you were talking about the biological basis in the brain, this fight, flight, or freeze phenomenon.
Yeah.
I can't help but put this in the context. Just recently, there's the events at Davos this week and the dynamics that are taking place on a global scale
Yeah.
and how this is impacting every one of us so that even our personal and business relationships become loaded with an us them kind of mentality. And we're ready to fight or take flight.
Yeah.
This whole cancel culture phenomenon seems to be about taking flight. But some people are frozen by this. They maybe don't want to do business with somebody who has a different political opinion from themselves.
Right. They're afraid.
Mm.
Yeah, when something is as grandiose as this, global, how do we? This goes to the other point I took away: the meditation, the being comfortable with yourself. Because it seems to me that when the world is in chaos, we need to go in to ourselves. Do you have some thoughts about that?
Yes, I do. I actually, from what I've seen, the people who teach us about meditation are die-hard meditators, which is great. They're very into it. And from what I've seen, some people, that's where they want to live, in that world of meditation. So in my mind, it's a bit of hiding out, not dealing with themselves in the world as a whole person. They're spending their time meditating all the time. And I've seen some people who really struggle with that. And so there's when they're being trained in meditation, they can get caught there for a while before they can evolve out of it. So this is where I like to help people find something that's in the realm of meditation, but still functioning for them in their life. So if they're a runner, just connecting more with your body while you're running, it can help your mind go blank. And that's a form of meditation. You're in the no thinking brain, you're in the feeling your body brain. So that would, to me, would be a powerful practice for someone to move into. Now, when it comes to the global stage here that we're considering, I think going back to these micro practices like validation, if all of those world leaders were validating, I see what you're trying to say, I see where you're trying to go with this, and I understand that this is threatening for you or whatever. I don't agree with your point of view. This is where I'm coming from. And I hope we can find some middle ground somewhere. To me, that would be more effective in the communication than everybody saying, I'm right, this is the way it is. It's not the way it is. It is for them in their world, maybe, but for somebody else in their world, it's not like that. So,
Okay.
I don't know. What do you think of that?
I'm just bringing forward the idea of I read a little short book on masks and the masks we wear, and it was written by a Jesuit priest. I can't remember his name now, it's off the top of my head. But anyways, and when we talk about that, and I'm thinking Davos as well, and even my work experience, when I burnt out of work and getting close to retirement, and you walk across and you kind of go, okay, now I put on my mask, my work mask, okay. So in Davos, we had even David Beckham there. We've, had our prime minister. We've had all these good folks they wear this mask, the corporate mask,
Right.
okay. And sometimes when they wear that corporate mask, they say, this is the real me. And it could be, we don't know because we don't live with them, we don't interact with them daily. And so I think we are shaped and our responses and the way we interact with people with the mask we're wearing at that time.
Mhm.
And sometimes when that mask comes off and your staff or somebody else sees the real mask that you really are, it is could be quite traumatic, or it could be quite enlightening, or it could be quite so, like when Mark Carney got up there and didn't really point a finger directly at Trump, but worded things in a way that it made it clear that he was talking about the US and Donald Trump. His mask at that point, I would say, was, Mark Carney. He might be, it might be still the corporate mask. I think we always have a genuine, authentic mask that we don't share 100% of the time. But
Yeah.
Well, Jane, do you want to address that question of masks and what?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that that's a really good point, Mark. And I am a real lover of masks myself and look at them and study them and have a hands-on exercise that I do with people where they create a mask and then decorate it to show themselves a little bit. But what came up for me as you were talking, Mark, was that um, uh, in order to sort of loosen the mask or take it off, that person has to be willing to become very vulnerable to the people they're talking to. And when people are functioning from that fight, flight, or freeze place, it's really tough for them to let themselves become vulnerable to the world. They're terrified, they're fearing death or destruction or whatever. And when you think about it, some of the world leaders don't want to reveal themselves. They won't let themselves look vulnerable because that's not what a leader does in their mind. And if they look vulnerable, then they give away some of their power. But in fact, when we see other politicians become vulnerable to the world, we see how much power they actually have. So I'm thinking of our own prime minister when he spoke from his heart, he felt vulnerable to me, and he's been given a lot of credit for what he said amongst people who judged him negatively for it. But allowing ourselves to be vulnerable is part of that process. And when you're wearing your mask tightly on your face, you're not letting people see the real you, which is what you just said, Mark. And I agree. I agree with that.
So in business, we put on a business face. At home, we have a family face. In the community, it's a community face. But in order to be consistent and coherent across the board, you have to be comfortable with yourself first and foremost, and not completely identify with those masks that you wear for different theaters. Yeah.
So imagine the mask being see-through then, Randall, and maybe it has a little edge on it that's colored or thick or something that says business, and then another see-through mask that has family. So you'd be putting these masks on, but they'd still get to see you. I think that's the goal, to be a whole person, is to be fully yourself wherever you are, whichever arena you're, and holding true to that full you while still wearing a mask.
Right. We used to say that we avoided sex, politics, and religion in public conversations. If you want to be successful in business, I'd have to say follow this advice that when in business, put sex, religion, and politics aside. It's just do your transactions, build a relationship with people as authentically as possible, and hopefully that evolves into a long-term business relationship where you understand each other, respect and trust, and your reputation goes with you. I have seen people who are so obsessed with politics, one side or the other, that they let that come as a barrier for business, and I just don't think that the business uh, is likely to succeed if you continually wear a political or religious or sex kind of lens on your business.
Yeah, and this is where doing the work on yourself, working on your relationship with yourself, if you do that work, it automatically starts to come through in your relationships in the workplace and everywhere that you go. And and it's easy once you once you break through the blocks and the things that make us fearful. We actually, our biggest fear is ourselves, I think, not the rest of the world. It's, what we've hidden inside of us that is actually not that scary once you start to look at it.
I think another thing I've taken away from your presentation today is the fact that when you work on relationships in one of the arenas, home or business or community or whatever, you probably are building strength in the relationships in all of those different arenas.
Yeah.
The skills, the wisdom, the insights that come with one are transferable. These are generic skills ultimately.
Yeah, they are, and actually we all have a consistent way of the way we respond to obstacles and blocks in our life. I've noticed this as I was a coach for artists, and some of the people I was coaching were very close friends of mine, and there'd be a blurring of the edges. I'd hear what's going on in their personal life or in their work life, and then the obstacles they were facing in their art practice. And they always dealt with them all, the obstacles, in the same way. They'd either start spinning around, or they'd avoid, or they couldn't get started, or they couldn't, there was always a common situation they were facing. And I think we're that way. So until we can uncover that way we respond to obstacles, we won't be able to move forward in our businesses or with clients, or it's
You,
pretty amazing.
you mentioned was you asked the question, who taught you to listen?
Yeah.
And perhaps nobody specifically, intentionally taught us to listen. They wanted your attention, maybe. But the thing is, those things that we learn unconsciously remain unconscious until there's a problem. And so a lot of us are probably not aware of our own listening styles. We need to work on that, raise it to a level of consciousness where we can be more instrumental in our own listening performance.
Yeah. I was in a program for a year a few years ago. It was around family and family skills and whatnot. And one of the practices was a listening practice. And we'd have a partner, and we would sit and listen to each other for 30 to 60 minutes, and without saying anything, and just acknowledging that we heard them, or whatever, some kind of acknowledgement. And I'll tell you, it was tough at the beginning to listen to somebody for 30 minutes or 60 minutes. But what I found the most difficult was in the speaking for that long. And so
Yeah.
I recognize myself in that, is that I've honed my skills for listening many years ago, but it's my skills for talking and being seen and speaking up were the things that I needed to work on. And it was a very helpful practice for that as well. So listening and then being the receiver are two different positions that we play. It's like the leader and the person being led. And often one of those gets left out, or
Yeah.
not focused on as much. So
Well,
the
and
list is often the last thing you think about.
as we're speaking, we are expecting feedback to guide us. Are we on track? Is this sinking in? You want to know if you're having an impact. But I
Mm.
think you did a really good job today. I had no trouble listening to you at all. You have an easy kind of pacing and manner about you that makes it very easy to listen to. Mark, do you have any more comments? You're on mute.
There you go. Okay, sorry about that. No, I don't have any further questions. Yeah, very interesting presentation. I really enjoyed it because it does transcend beyond business and into our everyday lives. It's connected, so it was very interesting for me.
No, just that if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer those for them as best I can. And I'm going to be developing some workshops for business people related to communication and experiential kinds of situations. So if you're interested in that, let me know, and I'll make sure you're on the list of people to let know when they're launched.
All right. Good to
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And we'll be editing this and posting it on YouTube, then sending the link out in various ways.
Thanks for sharing your time, Mark.
Okay, thank you very much too. Yes.
And thank you, Randall.